welcome to April, friends. It's April Fool's Day, and as it turns out, this year the joke is on Team Brave. See, we had meticulously planned to launch a Kickstarter today. You know, April 1st, April Fool's Day, no joke. But it accidentally launched last week, so yeah, I guess the joke was on us. But hey, when you work really hard to create magic and take something from a casual conversation and manifest it into a dreamy project, you roll with it when the universe says, it's time to go. So yes, I have collaborated with my awesome friend, client friend, Rachel. I always call her that, my friend, client friend. It's kind of an ongoing joke at this point. And we have officially launched a Kickstarter for our Create Brave cards. They are a guide to sourcing and manifesting your next steps in life and in business. Our goal was to design a deck that was like having a coach in your pocket, or in our case, like having two coaches in your pocket. They are inspired by tarot cards, but they're not tarot cards. They're just words and phrases to help you get creative with problem solving, getting unstuck, thinking about next steps, and simply getting out of the box when it comes to taking your next steps. As you know, I'm in the business of brave, helping people find their most courageous and brave paths, and Rachel is in the business of creativity. She helps people build lives that engage their creative spark. And together, we want to help you create brave. So that's why we created the Create Brave card deck. This stunning deck is beautiful beyond words with custom art and quality craftsmanship. We hope you'll consider supporting the Kickstarter and sharing it with others. This is the best time to get your cards. This price will never, ever be available again. And we got funded in 29 hours, which is wild and exciting and almost unheard of. So now we're working towards really fantastic stretch goals, but we need your help to get there. So please get all of the details at vickeryandco.com/createbrave. Check out the Kickstarter, see if you like the cards enough to become a backer, and please consider sharing it with others. Again, the link for all of the details is vickeryandco.com/createbrave. Okay, so let's chat about today's episode. When Heather Chauvin was diagnosed with stage 4 cancer, she was terrified, just like any of us would be. But interestingly enough, she wasn't afraid of death. She was afraid of dying without ever having felt truly alive. It turns out that cancer was the wake-up call she needed. It just wasn't the way she wanted the message delivered. And Heather wasn't going to take her newfound awakeness lightly. So she decided to get to work living her best life. Oh, and she also beat cancer. Join us as we talk about growing pains, how to lead by example, and the epic highs and lows of motherhood. Let's get started.
Courage, energized, and authentic.
This is Heather Vickery, and you're listening to The Brave Files, stories from people living courageously. When we choose bravely in big and small ways, it powerfully elevates our lives. I hope these stories connect with you and encourage you to embrace bravery in every possible way, day after day. Together, we can build a movement of courageous living that enriches both our lives and our communities. And if you enjoy the show, I ask you to please share it with others. Maybe think of someone who you want to choose bravely right alongside you. Thanks for tuning in. Now here's the show. Friends, I'm so happy to have you here with me this week. Please help me welcome a fellow Heather, a fellow coach to the show today. Heather Chauvin is a strategic parenting expert who helps ambitious women become leaders at work and at home. She's also the host of the Moms in Control podcast and a survivor of stage 4 cancer. And there's a lot more. That's like a little tiny blip on the radar of how cool this chick is. So Heather, welcome to the Brave Files.
Thank you, Heather. It's always an interesting conversation when I'm talking to another Heather.
I know we should just talk about that for a second. Is it okay? If you're comfortable to say how old you are, because I don't see very many Heathers.
I'm actually going to be 35 next week. Yeah, I'm a young Heather.
You're a really young Heather. So I'm 46. Happy birthday.
Thank you.
I'm 46, and there were a ton of Heathers in my school, but I never meet them in the professional workforce. And the year I was born was like one of the most popular names. And then it went to the least popular name
Interesting.
ever.
Interesting. I've known a few my age growing up, but not many. My mom said actually I was supposed to be a Stephanie, but then she named me Heather.
Oh, Stephanie was on my list also. I was going to be a Stephanie or a Julie. And my mom said, she looked at me and she said, well, this child's not Julie. She's Heather. Like, okay.
Interesting.
But Stephanie also, it's interesting. Heather, Stephanie, and Kristen and Jennifer. Those were the 4 names. Everybody was named one of those 4 names when I was growing up.
Interesting.
So for those of you listening, I'm very curious how many Heathers or Stephanies you grew up with. That's so funny. But it's always fun to find a fellow Heather. So there you go.
I find in the entrepreneur space, they're wildly creative.
Right?
Yeah.
Let's just roll with that. I love that. We are wildly creative just by design of our name. That actually reminds me, there's a really great YouTube clip. I'll share it with you all in the show notes by Benjamin Zander, who is a teacher and a writer. He wrote the book, The Art of Possibility. He's giving a speaking engagement. He's a conductor, and he talks about names. He said, parents don't give children names to live up to. They give children names to live into.
I love that.
Right? Yeah. So I'll have to think about what it means to live into our names. So not where I thought this conversation was going, but I dig it. Tell folks a little bit about you. And if memory serves me, we've connected before, which led to this interview. Your, first of all, stage 4 cancer, we don't often get the pleasure to talk to somebody who has experienced stage 4 cancer. So I'm really glad you're here. And I believe that most of your really brave entrepreneurial work has happened since then or through then. Do I have that right?
Yeah. And the interesting part was I became an entrepreneur before I got sick. So 7 years ago, I was diagnosed with a stage 4 cancer and raising the kids. I did start my business. Actually, it was about a year before then.
Okay.
But from writing the book and having to think of the timeline. It was September of 2013 when I gave my resignation to my corporate job. I used to be a social worker and made the decision like, okay, I'm done. I was on mat leave and I live in Canada. So you have a year.
Oh, that's so nice.
I say that to Americans and they're like, must be nice. And I'm like, oh.
No, I don't have any begrudgement for you on that. Everyone deserves it, and I'm glad that you got it. So there you go.
Well, yes. Anyways, that's a whole other podcast and conversation.
Well, because you started a business.
Yeah, and then because I started a business, and you don't get anything when you're a business owner. So anyways, I decided, okay, I'm not going back, but I took kind of that year as like I had something to go back to, right? The holding on to something. And it was in December that I was diagnosed. It was almost like as soon as I just cut all of the safety ties, it was like, oh, and now you're sick. But I knew previously that something was off, but I fell into that, that female trap of like, I don't have time for this. I don't have time for this. Give to everybody else but yourself. But it was actually 9 years before that when I really stepped into, there has to be something more when I became a mother, because I was educated, or I was getting educated, and everyone was like, it's just a phase, get over it, blah, blah, blah. And I kept looking around and thinking, am I the only one feeling like not settled on the inside? Like, what's going on here? And they're like, oh, suck it up, buttercup. So I fell into the wellness space, meditation, mindfulness. I hired the mentors. I went on the retreats. I did the workshops. But cancer really kicked my butt in the sense that it was the integration, like facing your biggest fears and looking at it. And that was the game changer for me, which really accelerated my message and how I worked with people, especially in the parenting space.
When you say facing the fears, I'm always very interested in, I have seen a number of different people have different fears. So what were your biggest fears when you were diagnosed with cancer?
Well, my number one fear was the fear of dying, which people think that is like, oh, that's common, that's normal. But the interesting part was I that was my masked fear. That was like my
I think
outward
so.
fear.
Yeah. That's the easy, that's the, not easy. I don't mean to be flippant, but the normal
Yeah.
go-to. Yeah.
Yeah, you're like, what are you afraid of? Oh, I'm afraid of dying. But there's a story that I tell. I remember I was in between treatments and I was home. So I would be in the hospital for a few weeks at a time. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I could go down that rabbit hole regarding treatment and my resistance to it and having to surrender to Western medicine. But I remember being home in between treatments and I was in the bathroom. It was in the middle of the night and I woke up paralyzed in fear and just, in my head, it's like, I'm going to die, I'm going to die, I'm going to die, I'm going to die. And I went into the bathroom and trying to hold it all in because I could not let anybody, I could not disrupt anybody else with my emotions, right? So I had to hold it all in, hold it all in. I'm like, you're going to die, you're going to die, you're going to die. And then there was this little voice that said, but you're not dead yet. Like you're not, in this moment, Heather, you are not dead. And then I was like, okay, I'm not dead. I'm not dead. And then this other voice came in and said, you're not afraid of dying. You do not know how to feel alive because you have never felt alive. And I realized my biggest fear was not dying. My biggest fear is I did not know how to be anything but in survival mode. That was terrifying.
It is terrifying, but also it's wildly intuitive and vibrant. And I think some people would have that sort of experience and still not know how to be alive, but that's not what you chose. So what shifted for you after that moment?
So I also want to preface that all the work that I was doing, right? So cancer was not the kick in the teeth that got me into personal development. So I was into it previously, like the meditation, the green juice, all of that, the journaling. And now it's like, oh crap, now I actually have to do the work. Now I have to do it.
The rest of it is like, well, if I just have the right smoothie or if I just journal enough or if I meditate enough, I'll be happy or it'll all work. It'll be fine. And it's masking. You have to do the work.
Yeah. Yeah. I can see when people are running away from themselves and I was completely running away from myself. And then I had to start asking myself, okay, how do you want to feel? I always say that to people. How do you want to feel? Ask yourself that 1,000,000 times a day. Like right now, while I'm in this conversation with you, how do I want to feel? I want to feel connected. I want to feel energized. I want to feel authentic. Okay. How am I channeling that energy through my words, through my attention, through everything that I'm doing? And so going back to that moment, that story where I said, I want to feel alive. And then I was like, oh crap, I don't know how to feel alive. So I started asking myself, Heather, what do alive looking people do? Like, what do they do? And I remember watching people outside in general, right? Like going for a walk, exercising, sitting at cafes. And
I know we missed that, right?
Yeah. I'm like, oh, I would do anything for that now. And just looking out the window or journaling. Mm-hmm. So I started doing these things very slowly. Like I had no energy. So alive that day would have been taking a shower or just boosting myself out of bed. But it was those little things. But here's the thing. When I started doing that, I didn't feel alive. I felt everything that was inside of me that needed to come out. The guilt, the shame, the fear, the anger, the overwhelm, the not enoughness. All of that had to pour out before the aliveness and energy could come back in. And that was the frustrating part because we're so like, I want it now, I want it now, I want it now. And I had to kind of declutter, right? Before I could bring in the good stuff.
Yeah. The clearing, the process of removing that. I have a client and a friend who I've done some work with who's an energy healer. Yeah. And before she'll do any of that, you've got to clear before you can manifest or create space. And I always find that such an interesting process. That's one of the reasons that I'm not a big fan of the girl wash your face concept, because I think that's just like, suck it up, get over it, be a big girl, versus I think you have to acknowledge and feel all of the things that you're feeling express them, and then you can move through them onto that next phase, which you're calling living. And what I'm hearing, maybe because I'm just really in tune to it, is I think your desire to live in that moment for you was your desire to step into bravery, right? Like if it meant getting a shower or taking a walk or feeling sad or moving through your enoughness, those are really brave things to do when you've never done them before.
Yeah. Yeah. And in the moment, you don't really think you're being brave.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah, you don't. That's why, my coaching platform is called the Brave Method. And BRAVE stands for boundaries, reassessment, reframing, resilience, action, accountability, vulnerability, and expand and empower. But the 3 R's, that reassessment, that is so impactful because you have to stop and look back and be honest about what you see and what you felt and if it got you where you wanted or not. If we move past reassessment, if we don't look at what's happened, we can't ever know if we're on the right path.
Mm-hmm. And it doesn't always, I also get triggered by we can do hard things. Because
I like that one because I think, we get to self-define hard, just like we get to self-define success. But I'm curious to hear
yeah. So we hear it all the time in the wellness space. And I think I see starting this like cracking opening of people being, especially I could see it happening next year because of the pandemic, the toxic stuff that happens of like, just think positive and just do all these things. And I just want happiness. And it's like, but we have the yin and the yang. We have the night and the dark, and we have to feel both.
Yes.
And so I keep hearing we can do hard things or I can do hard things. But I'm like, freedom doesn't feel hard to me. Like there's a sense of flow and ease. But we're a culture that's addicted to hard and busy.
Oh, yeah.
So when I have to put hard and busy on my freedom, it feels very counteractive. So I'm like, I don't find things hard. I really don't. What I find them is emotionally uncomfortable. So sending an email to a potential or doing a Facebook Live or like something that scares the crap out of you is not hard or difficult, right? It's not hard to put your shoes on and walk outside if you're an able-bodied person.
It's just emotionally challenging.
It's emotionally challenging. So I started saying I can do uncomfortable things.
Oh, now that I'm all into. That's my catchphrase. Everything we really want is just on the other side of uncomfortable.
Yeah. And so I'm like, it's not hard. It's just emotionally uncomfortable. And when you realize that, you're just moving through this energetic resistance. And you're like, oh, that's the story. That's the game that we're trying to play. We're not running away from the discomfort. We're running towards the discomfort. But when I heard I can do hard things, it's like, oh, now I'm purposely trying to make this hard and suffer through this because I believe everything needs to be hard. So that was a big mental game changer for me too, because as a mother, as a business owner, as a, someone who values her health, like as number one priority and teach that to women, I'm like, we can just do uncomfortable things, but it doesn't have to kill you. That defeats the whole purpose.
Right. And the whole point is that it probably won't kill you.
And we've been taught not to feel.
Yeah, you're right about that. And that's so much of the core of the work I do. I call bullshit on the word fearless. I say brave is greater than fearless. Fearless is for sociopaths and 3-year-olds. And the whole point is to feel the fear and, put it in your pocket and do the thing anyway.
Yeah.
But to pretend you don't feel it doesn't get you anywhere.
Nope. You just shove it down and it comes out sideways eventually. It will get you eventually.
I love that visualization that it comes out sideways. So, all right. So you're building this business. You have small children. May I ask, because we haven't said, what type of cancer did you have?
So it was a stage 4 sporadic Burkitt's, which meant I had little tumors growing all over my abdomen.
Oh my, that's terrifying.
Yeah.
Yes. And you're in full remission?
Yes. I went in remission within the first a few months. And then with the type of cancer, the reoccurrence rate was pretty high within the first year or two. And then I just, after after I went through traditional treatment, I kept asking myself, how good can it get? How can I get better? How can I get better? I didn't just want to survive, people, and I kind of felt like they just dumped me. And this isn't, they purposely didn't do this. This is just how the healthcare system works. But it was like, you don't have cancer anymore. There you go. And I just remember looking at my doctor saying, now what? I feel like you dropped me in China and I don't speak their language and I don't understand the culture. And she was like, well, you got to figure it out. And I'm like,
damn.
Oh my gosh. So I was trying to run away from being sick. So I'm like, what can I do? What can I do? What can I do? I found integrative medicine. And now I'm just like, how good can it get? And every day I'm learning something new and generating more energy than I ever thought possible for myself. But we're not taught this as women in our modern culture.
No, we are not taught that at all. So what would you say having and surviving and thriving through cancer has taught you?
That the more alive you feel, that is the whole point of life. And you are worthy of feeling good. And I did not realize that for a few years. I heard it previously. Everyone's always trying to search for their purpose. Like, what's my purpose? What's my purpose?
Yeah.
And I think that's just a term that has been well marketed to. And then we're trying to find this golden ticket somewhere that we can't find. I bought into it. I was like, what's my purpose? What's my purpose? But the second you start to feel good, and that's through any bucket of your life, your body, your mind, your bank account, your relationships. Once one area, so you start gaining momentum in one area, it's connected to the other areas and you start feeling better. And then you're like, because if you ask me what my life purpose is today, it changes with the wind sometimes. And it's not, I think that's the question that all human beings are trying to answer. I don't even remember what your question was, but I'm just like going on a rant here.
Oh, it's a good one.
Yeah. And that's what my point is like, sometimes you start on one path and you're like, what was I doing again? I want to go down this street now.
Yeah. I love that. A lot of people hold themselves so firmly to the path that they've created. Again, that's why I like that those 3 hours, reassessment, reframing, resilience, that taking the time to intentionally look at where you've been and make sure that where you're going is still where you want to go.
Yeah.
Right. And so you're saying it floats with the wind and it changes, but for some people it's not that easy, right? Like they're so sure that they're not allowed to change their minds. Talk about freedom, being able to realize that just because it's always been done that way doesn't mean it has to be done that way is revolutionary.
I'm raising a teenager right now.
Oh.
And at school, they're asking, like, which path, what do you want to be when you're older? And he's freaking out about it.
Who the hell knows?
I'm like, do you know how many people who still do not know who or what they want to be? I said, honey, you have so much opportunity in front of you. I'm like, actually, what makes you energized? Like, what do you love doing? He's like, I don't know. I'm like, you got to follow those breadcrumbs. I'm like, because you do know. You're just resisting. Because I could, mirror back to you what I see you light up when you light up in your life. And he would probably be like, but Mom, that's not hard enough. Or that's not what everyone else thinks I should do. So
ouch.
it's like this unconditioning, and it starts so young, even when you're trying to raise children who are conscious.
It does. And as a parent as a human, as a coach, an adult who spends a lot of time in gratitude and self-compassion and empowerment and all of that, I find that I'm wholly unskilled and capable of getting this through for my children. But I'm reminded that it's simply not possible. It would be so great if they could all just learn it by osmosis, but we learn by living. We learn by experiencing and doing. And so I am giggling and I love it, because your bio says that you're a strategic parenting expert. And I'm like, that's so cool. But who the fuck is a parenting expert? Or maybe it's just that we're an expert at telling other people how to parent, because it's really hard.
Well, the funny thing about that is people are like, you're a parenting expert, or like, what's your title? And I usually come back with human being, and they don't like that. So then it's like, well, we got to put this in the bio. But here's the interesting part about parenting. So I started my career in social work. I helped families reconnect and, whatever. Come home, yell at my children. And then I was like, I'm a hypocrite and I can't live like this.
Or you're just human.
Or I'm human. But it felt like I was a hypocrite because there was no space for being human in the professional realm. It was like, this is the strategy. This is the way you do it. This is what you need to tell them, Heather. And I was like, no, not for me. So then when I went in the online space and I started podcasting and helping people, they're like, what's the answer? Give me the quick fix. Give me the strategy. And I said, you need to lead. I said, parenting is a leadership position. And how do you want your children to be? Then you need to role model that, but have absolutely no attachment that they're actually going to listen to you.
That's it.
Yeah.
That's the secret to parenting.
Yeah.
Lead by example, but don't be attached to whether or not they follow your example.
It's annoying. And then that is the whole point of you cannot white knuckle. And what I found was, so I went into this, talking about mindfulness and conscious parenting. And then when I got sick, I was like, I'm done having these conversations because I would hear women all the time. So I work primarily with women. I don't have time for this. I can't implement. My marriage is falling apart. I don't like my business. I don't like my career. I'm lonely. I'm this, my mind. And I'm like, okay. Oh gosh. Oh, there's a lot of projection going on here. There's a lot of mirroring. And every time I have a parenting conversation now, this is my favorite, with quote unquote parenting experts, they say the same thing. And when I'm introduced as that, I'm like, I'm not an expert. I might be an expert. I'm still trying to figure out who I am.
Yeah.
And I probably know my children better than anyone else, but they know themselves better than I know them. And essentially, what is an expert? We're all trying to master something.
Yeah. I appreciate that. It is just way harder to parent teenagers than I ever imagined. Mm-hmm. When my children were little babies and toddlers, and for any of you who are in that space, the days are so long and you feel like you're going to be stuck there forever. And even if you're intentional and you're present and you're loving it, and there were moments that were great like that, but it's like, oh, this is so hard. Dude, it's so much easier when they're toddlers.
It's interesting.
When they're teenagers, for me anyway.
Yeah.
But it's a different kind of hard. That was like a physical hard. Like you don't sleep enough and you're running around. And this is some sort of emotional.
It's a mind game.
It's a mind game. I was not personally prepared for how much it would hurt when they detach.
The grief.
There's so much grief when I say they don't need me anymore. And then my friends are like, oh, they'll always need you. And I'm like, oh, it's different. Of course, they need me. I'm their mother, but they don't need me to survive. They don't need me to make their meals, or, they don't even need me to drive them around anymore. They don't need me. Now they have to want to need me.
Yeah. Have you ever, I'm so, now when I watch movies and I see puppies being taken away from their mother, I'm like, oh my gosh, I know how she feels. She just gives birth to these things, raises them for 8 weeks, and then they're gone. And then, I'm like, it is so painful. And it's just, the grief. And my mom actually lives with us, which is a whole other can of worms. It has been personal growth on steroids, but I look at her completely different now. And time, seasons that I had in my life, I'm like, I am so sorry. I
apologize to my mom all the time these days.
Yeah. Every time you look at a woman, you're like, wow, you are so strong. The things that we have to undergo that, are done in silence.
My mother used to say, I hope you have a daughter just like you. And I would say, me too, because I'm perfect. And then I remember a couple of years ago, I called her and I was like, I have a daughter just like me, and I'm really sorry. So sorry, I was an asshole. She's like, it's okay. I loved her for. She's like, oh, it's okay, honey. I forgive you. You came back. It was okay. I'm like, okay, that's hopeful. That's very hopeful.
You're like, you called me Heather. Like, it was inevitable.
Yeah, exactly. I had a name to live into. I love that. You mentioned your book earlier. Tell us about your book, and I'd love to hear a little bit about your writing process.
Okay, so Dying to be a Good Mother is about essentially how we kill off parts of ourselves as women
Wow.
to be good in the world. And there's so much. As every time I talk about it, it's just there's another layer and another layer. It's a prescriptive memoir, so I tell my story through cancer, but I also tell my story about how parenting was my awakening and opening. I was actually 18 when I had my son, when I became a mother, and I just remember looking at him thinking, I need to become the person that I most desire you to be. And it's intriguing because culturally we're taught to give, and that's what good is in the world as a mother or a woman. And I think now we're really starting to debunk that and wake up to it and be like, actually, no, that's not beneficial. And one of my actual loves is teaching parents how to read and understand children's behavior, because I truly believe that when we can just see people for what they're experiencing, like they're not angry at us, they're not mad at us, they're projecting how they feel. This is how we create connection in the world. And again, you can be fully alive yourself, being brave, going after what you want and desire. Doesn't happen overnight. And that's what the world needs from you. And that's this quote unquote secret that everybody's searching for.
I love that. And also, I'm amazed at how remarkably mature and intuitive you were as an 18-year-old to say, I need to be the person I want you to see yourself as. Because I was 38 when that happened and I had 4 kids. And I remember that moment like it was yesterday.
Yeah, I feel like I came out of the womb 100 years old, to be honest with you. Like, it took me a really long time to say, oh, I feel aligned now. Like my soul, I've always felt way older, like old soul. So yeah, the older I get, the more I'm like, okay, I think my soul is as old as my body now.
I have a really good friend who used to say that. He said, I was born old and every year I get younger. I get closer to being balanced. That's fascinating. You're only the second person I've ever heard say that, but I think it's something cool. So first of all, I love the title of your book. Where can folks find it? We're going to put it on, I do want you to answer that question, but we're going to put it in our show notes, and we have a bookshop.org page that has the Brave Files library. So we'll make sure it's there, but otherwise, where can they find it?
Well, I made it really easy for everyone, so they can just go to dyingtobeagoodmother.com. Cool. And there's a link there to everywhere you can purchase the book online. You could probably Google it and find it everywhere as well. And we also have a downloadable workbook. It's 27 pages to go along with the book that you can download for free.
Oh, that's awesome. What a great resource. Thank you for sharing that. It sounds to me like your mission to actually live fully and to be part of that experience is a very celebratory way to move through life. And one of the questions that I ask every week to each guest is, how do you like to celebrate? I didn't mean to put words in your mouth, but does that feel that way to you? Like it's a series of small celebrations?
So I want to laugh because celebrating to me feels like receiving. And as somebody who, we all have trauma in our lives, but I think that's something I'm still working on, which is celebrating. Learning how to really authentically celebrate is a skill that I'm still developing, like letting it seep in, to all the way in through the skin. But I remember when I wasn't living, and this is, not even children, but in my whole life, just surviving, just existing and feeling like I was borderline going to die. I didn't know how to feel. I didn't know how to feel the good. And I think I'm still in recovery for that, of like really knowing how to celebrate myself.
Oh, that's so interesting. And I so appreciate that perspective and the notion that you feel that it is a receiving, because I actually think that it is an external process and emotion, because most forms of celebration involve, it can be anything, but, pumping your hand and shouting, "That's amazing," or telling somebody that you love, or sending a text, or declaring on social media, or going out to dinner. Like, kind of depends on what the celebration is. I got out of bed today, but whatever. And what science tells us, particularly positive psychology, is that when we share our happiness, it's contagious.
Yeah, I agree.
And so it is so interesting to me to hear you say that it's a receiving. And I'd be curious to know if after this conversation, you'll have to let us know if you look at it, perhaps it could be receiving and giving, and how it can create joy and gratitude for the people around you as well.
That's so interesting, because when I hear celebrate, I feel like it feels selfish. But when you reframe it, and when I say selfish, I don't physically mean selfish.
Yeah,
I
mean,
understand. It means individualized.
Yeah.
But my love language is acts of service, and I would rather give everything away. That doesn't feel like celebration to me. That feels like purpose.
But it is celebration.
I know. It's so weird. Yeah.
Cool, right? That's why I love
Well,
this
I guess
question.
I've been celebrating. I do it. I've always thought of it as like giving. My husband gets so annoyed with it because I'm like, he's like, "What do you want for your birthday?" And I'm like, "Go buy this for this shelter." And he's like, "Oh my God, you're so annoying." And I'm like, I want to give. I want to give.
Yeah.
That makes me so happy to make other people happy. So yes.
Yeah, I love it. There are so many ways to celebrate, and it just brings joy. Celebration in the form of giving your time or your energy. Last night, I had a really great client win, and I literally started dancing around my house like a weirdo. And my partner was so tickled and excited that she got up and started dancing. The next thing you know, we're joyfully dancing in the living room. And that is external proof that celebration brings joy and connection and community. And yeah, we'll live into that.
And I like how you say it's contagious, because it's just, that's the virus we all need to be getting right now.
Absolutely. My own mentor used to say celebration is a lost art. And hearing, going through this conversation with you, I feel like that's really very, very true. And just like everything else you've said in this whole conversation, if we want to do it, we have to be very intentional about inviting it.
For sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
all
cool.
the feeling.
Yeah, very cool. I so appreciate that. Well, I also get to ask, those are the two questions that I ask every single week. And so this one is really near and dear to my heart. What is your favorite charitable organization to support?
So when you asked me this, or when I knew this question was coming, I had about 80 things go through my mind. But I will tell you, one that I've personally been a part of that I love giving back to is Big Brothers Big Sisters. I was a big sister, and it just brings me so much joy to allow children to experience like what true connection is when someone else again, coming back to celebrating,
Yes.
allowing people to experience true connection with an adult or someone who's a little bit older than them, to be like, "I got you. I see you."
I love that. And that's a magical way, is to help others celebrate, which is clearly external. That's a wonderful organization. Listeners, I ask you this every week, and I really hope you listen. If you don't already know your local Boys and Girls chapter, get to know them. They're going to be our charity of the week. We'll have all their social media links out on all of our social media platforms and in the show notes. And do what you can, give what you can, even if that's just a little bit of a social media love or a presence or a like or whatever. If you have time or money, do that too, because it's always been so, but right now, this time and space that we're in right now, coming together as a global community to love and support and celebrate with one another is what's going to get us through. It's what's going to make the difference.
I love that.
Yeah, that's so cool. Well, my fellow Heather, will you share your 3 words with us one last time?
Courage, energized, and authentic.
And I feel all of that for you. I do want to, I want to play with energized for just a moment and hear what your motivation is with that word and what you mean when you say it.
Oh, dang. It means so many things. I feel like energized and alive are very close for me,
Sure.
but it's just like not feeling dead inside. It's like things have moved around. Like these conversations to me are energizing.
Yeah.
Like I get so excited. It feels like energy in motion. It's just movement, excitement, but energized. Like I feel strong. I could go. And there's a lot more to give.
That's beautiful. I love that. Well, I think that you're a neat chick, and I hope this is okay. That didn't offend you with the word chick.
I love it.
Okay.
I love it. I'm over here like giggling. I'm like, oh,
It's so fun,
thanks,
right?
thanks.
And I really appreciate your honesty and your willingness to be like, yeah, my bio totally said I'm a parenting expert, but what does that even mean? But you have such a gift of way of helping people look at things from a unique perspective and to come at it from a different angle and to be creative in their approach. And that does take an expert touch. Lots of people get good at maybe doing that for themselves, but to be able to do that for other people is a special trait. And so I'm so grateful for what you give out and into the world. And I'm so thrilled that you came to spend some time with us.
Thank you. I love this conversation. And Heather, I truly, not only because your name is Heather, but you create a unique space, especially in the online platform like podcasting. I just love listening to the conversations you have with people. So thank you for putting yourself out there as well.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that. Listeners, I hope that you enjoyed yourself and you're feeling a little bit more courage towards living an energized and authentic life from this. I would love to know what you think. Give us a call at 312-646-0205 and share with us what you loved about the episode, what you'd like to see more of, or maybe even just how you're out choosing bravely every single day. I want to remind you that if you are looking to be here now, to be brave on purpose, come and join us in our Brave on Purpose Collective. It's a Facebook group that's totally free and filled with the coolest people you will ever know who are committed to helping themselves and one another step out of fear and into bravery in every possible way. Just search up Brave on Purpose when you're in Facebook, answer 3 little questions, and we'll see you there. This is Heather Vickery reminding you today and every day to go out and choose bravely. Hey friends, I want to share something really exciting with you. We already know you enjoy listening to podcasts because you're listening to this one, but I'm also betting you enjoy audiobooks. And hey, listen, if you don't already enjoy audiobooks, then it's time to check them out. That's why I'm really excited to share Libro.fm with you. They are an incredible new platform for listening to audiobooks. And by choosing Libro.fm over other audiobook services, you are supporting a local bookstore of your choice and investing in your local community. Libro.fm offers over 150,000 audiobooks via their primary platform, which, by the way, they built with love and from scratch because they're a small business also. They even offer bookseller recommendations for great audiobook options. You can sign up right now via www.vickeryandco.com/LibroFM. That's vickeryandco.com/LIBROFM. And when you do, you'll get 1 free audiobook of your choice, and the proceeds will go to your favorite local bookstore. Now, check what I just said there. You're going to get a free book, and the proceeds are still going to go to your local bookstore because Libro.fm makes sure that their booksellers get paid even when they give a promo to customers. I've listened to over 20 audiobooks this year alone. I especially love listening to memoirs read by the author, and it feels great knowing that all of my purchases support my local bookstore, The Book Table, in Oak Park, Illinois. Libro.fm. The same audiobooks, the same price, but a completely different story. Check them out right now at vickeryandco.com/LibroFM. Have you ever thought about starting a podcast? Maybe you've had this thought and then quickly shut it down because who has the time? Or you don't know how, or gosh, it just all seems too hard. If you have something to share with the world, we want to encourage you to get your message out. The world needs to hear it. Did you know that 50% of all homes are podcast fans? If you've ever wondered about having your own podcast or how it can increase your business or get your message across, then please join me and the other experts from the Podcast Power Academy for our monthly free Q&A session. It's called So You Want to Start a Podcast? This casual live conversation will help you understand how podcasting can be a great decision, why now is the best time to get started, and how to get into action with it. Visit podcastpoweracademy.com to learn more. You've been listening to The Brave Files, stories of people living courageously. To learn more about the show, find our show notes and full episode transcripts, or to get some great bonus content, visit thebravefilespodcast.com. And we would love to know what you think of the show. You can give us a call at 312-646-0205. Let us know your thoughts on the episode, the show in general, or maybe share with us how you're out choosing bravely. This episode is brought to you by Vickery & Co. Success Coaching. Coaching that helps you maintain a life well lived and a business well run. Learn more at vickeryandco.com. Our music was created and produced in a custom collaboration with Matt Lewis from ML Creative Consulting, a boutique firm dedicated to helping clients identify their unique sound and amplify their brand with custom delivered soundtracks. We couldn't do any of this without our extraordinary audio engineer, Andrew Olson. Learn more about him and check out his work at findandrewolson.com. And special thanks to everyone on Team Brave, from our producers, associate producers, copy editors, writers, and support team. Special thanks to Molly, Mary, Kim, Sabra, and Sabrina. I'm your host and executive producer, Heather Vickery. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll talk to you next week.